the Soros example is really interesting. Can I share a few anecdotes?
Gosh, I hope you will.
So when I went into the WikiLeaks archive to look at all of the State Department cables that referenced George Soros or the Open Society Foundation or any of its associated groups, the Open Society Institution, the Open Society Forum, I was surprised when I saw the communications in the State Department cables start in 1973, because the Open Society Foundation did not start until 1979. And when I looked at the State Department cables, they were all related to Soros Associates, which was the firm operated by George Soros's older brother, Paul Soros, who is, according to his New York Times obituary, one of the greatest titans of the shipping and port and infrastructure development world. And Paul Soros is all over these State Department cables in tons of countries. Gabon, Iran. Remember, this is pre-1970. This is,
pre-revolution.
Yes,
yeah.
Right. And so the State Department is working with Soros Associates, Paul Soros, in order to secure contracts for him, in order to secure favorable loan terms to foreign governments, and in order to intervene on the bidding process for port construction, for lucrative port deals. I think one in Gabon was, I think it was like a $700 million to $1 billion port project. Huge money for Gabon, a project in Gabon in early 1970s. And one of these State Department cables is really interesting. It's the U.S. Embassy there, and they are talking about how 3 senior executives from Brown and Root are going to be coming to Gabon that week and are looking to have arrangements made to meet with, I think, the president of the country and other influential leaders in government and in civil society, and for the embassy to arrange everything from their travel to their hotel to introducing them to all the senior leaders in the country. And Brown and Root was working together with Soros and Associates on this port project, and they were bidding against other foreign infrastructure development companies from other countries. And one of the cables basically suggests that the embassy should relay back to Soros and Brown and Root the status of the bid going to them and anything favorable that can be done to nudge that contract going to Brown and Root and Soros. Now, what's interesting about this is a few things. So this is the example of what you were talking about, which is we're doing this because we want to stop. There's a big fight over Africa with the Russians and with the Chinese all throughout the Cold War. A lot of Africa had sided with Russia, and the Russian communism was seen as an egalitarian counterweight to a sort of racist United States, and there was a big diplomacy push there. So getting Brown and Root and Soros to control the infrastructure in the country and to get those contracts and to get the proceeds and remits was advancing U.S. interests under U.S. national security and U.S. national interests, which means there's a State Department interest in doing favors for Soros and Brown and Root. Now, Brown and Root, which would later become Halliburton, or Brown and Root is, I guess, Halliburton, I guess, acquired Brown and Root.
Kellogg Brown and Root.
Yes,
yeah.
Right. Which, of course, is, Dick Cheney was the, I think, CEO and president. And Brown and Root in the JFK files, it was very interesting. The ones that were declassified just a few months ago by Tulsi Gabbard, they have a whole section on the CIA's, all of the CIA influence nodes over Brown and Root, and it was fascinating. I believe both Brown Sr. and Jr. held covert security clearances with the Central Intelligence Agency. There's a memo in these new unredacted JFK files, and it was a CIA internal fact check, a crisis communications. How do we respond to this new piece in Ramparts magazine called Brown and Root's CIA Dimensions? And so this is the Houston Republican CIA power base. This has been the big power base of the Republican Party for almost 100 years now. This oil, giant oil zone. Yes, exactly. And so Ramparts writes this piece, and it accuses the CIA of running this vast network through the petroleum industry and through a web of NGOs and trade associations all over Houston. And it focuses on this Brown and Root network, because Brown and Root also had something called the Brown Foundation, which was a corporate sponsored NGO. And in this, they actually reveal that both Brown Sr. and Brown Jr. had covert security clearances for work with the Central Intelligence Agency. So while you have, one of the world's premier infrastructure and development firms, which would later, go on to work, with Soros in Africa, and then would later spawn Vice President Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, who started off her career in USAID and comes from that same, Halliburton, Brown and Root lineage. They've direct ties all over the CIA. And I guess I bring this up to say that in addition to that, you had this web of adjacent NGOs around statecraft there. So, for example, in that same files, again, the CIA is doing an internal fact check in this memo, where they say Ramparts has accused all of these people of being CIA, and it's a memo, I think, to one of the local directors saying, here's we reviewed the files. Here's what's true and false about the Ramparts article.